important milestone. Montgomery County now has a blueprint to guide us in meeting our climate goals. There is a lot of hard work and good thinking on the part of hundreds of community members embedded on the pages of this plan. You'll get to hear from a few of them this afternoon. We would not be where we are today were it not for the work of an incredible team of dedicated county staff. Many dozen county colleagues from numerous departments and agencies participated in the development of the plan. Even while supporting the climate planning process, county staff have been busy doing climate action, developing green building policies, procuring electric buses, planting trees, designing bus rapid transit, installing EV charger wayfinding signage. These are among the numerous efforts underway that contribute to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and increasing climate resilience in the county. I want to particularly give a shout out to a few colleagues who burned the emissions-free night oil with me in order to bring this plan to the finish line. From the Department of Environmental Protection, Stan Edwards, Lindsay Shaw, and Doug Weisberger. From the Department of Transportation, Sandy Brecker. And from the Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, Mara Parker and Tina Laboy. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our County Executive, Mark Elridge, who has been a steadfast champion of climate action. The County Executive has pushed the climate team to be aggressive in our efforts. He understands the urgency and magnitude of the challenge that we are facing with climate change. Welcome, Mr. Executive.
So I'm really happy to be standing here, and I'm really happy to be in Marion Fryer Town Plaza. I mean, if any of you, and I'm sure a lot of you knew Marion, she was a big believer in community and big believer in Wheaton, a tireless advocate, and we all miss her. And it's really, really nice and appropriate that this plaza has been named for her. So I'm so happy to be here today. It's a beautiful open park plaza. It's a kind of model for the kind of urban park that we can build. Across the street is the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission building. It's also the home to a bunch of county departments and agencies, including Department of Environmental Protection, Recreation, and Permitting Services. It's LEED Platinum. It's Maryland's first government-owned LEED Platinum building, and it's 14-story in the heart of Wheaton, so it's in the right place, proximate to transit, built the right way. It's got geothermal well for efficient heating and cooling. It's got electric vehicle charging stations, and it has solar panels. So this is a pretty complete representation of what we're hoping for. Looking at this clamp here, it's like, wow, that's kind of an archaic device. So who do I see here from the political universe? Introduce yourself. David Sullivan. You're ground zero for climate change right now. So, the council declared a climate emergency when I was on the council, and the numbers are pretty bleak. The World Meteorological Organization cited global average temperature in 2019 was 1.1 degrees centigrade or Celsius above the pre-industrial world. The 5-year average temperatures from 2015 to 2019 and the 10-year average from 2010 to 2019 are the highest on record. At 1.5 degrees Celsius warming, the project report projects that climate-related risks to human health, livelihoods, food security, human security, water supply, economic growth will all increase and will increase even more at 2 degrees warming. In order to prevent warming beyond 1.5 degrees centigrade, we need to reduce emissions by 7.6% every year from this year to 2030, according to the 2020 UN Emission Gap Report. So Montgomery County's climate goals are to reduce community-wide greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2027 and 100% by 2035. They're among the most ambitious in the world, and I can only think of one other place in the United States that is more ambitious than we are, and it is far more ambitious than the state of Maryland. So here we are on this road. I've said before that if COVID hadn't completely dominated the news cycle, the rapidly deteriorating climate and worsening projections for the negative impacts of climate change would likely have dominated the news cycle instead. We need to bring the same kind of awareness to fighting climate change as we brought to fighting COVID. One of the consistent messages that we brought to the COVID battle was that the spread of COVID was completely controllable. It was spread by our own actions. Whether we decided to interact or not interact with people was the thing that decided whether or not COVID spread or it didn't spread. It was completely a people-to-people problem. And so until the vaccines came, it was controllable only by people. From my youth, I remember a similar theme that was brought to us by this bear that wore a Rangers hat, Smokey, I believe. And, you know, the thing they always would say at the end of his little commercials was only you can prevent forest fires. So only you can prevent forest fires. We were the only ones who were going to control the spread of COVID. And the truth is only we can end climate change, us. It's not going to be done by anybody else. The weather's not going to miraculously change. We're not going to be saved by miraculous innovations that we haven't seen yet. We have to make conscious decisions at the individual level, the business level, and the government level. We either fight climate change and persevere and reward ourselves with leaving our children a better planet, or we can do nothing, hope it goes away, and ignore the horrible mess we've created. And we've chosen this county to go forward and address climate change. The climate action plan we're announcing today is our county's strategic roadmap to eliminate greenhouse gas emissions and to achieve our climate goals. We all know this plan is ambitious. When the council set the goals for addressing greenhouse gas emissions, we did not know how we were going to achieve them. We really didn't know. And we were having a debate about a longer range goal or a shorter range goal. And some people on the council wanted the longer range goal because they thought it more achievable. And some of us on the council wanted the shorter range goal. And Tom is one of those who supported the shorter range goal. And what we argued was, if we picked the shortest goal among our options, we may not know how to get there, but we would never be able to say our job was done. If we had picked the safe goal, something that our advisors told us, well, you can do this by 2030 and you can do this by 2035. You won't have to break a sweat. It's all achievable. We would still have left an amazing amount of work left to be done for the next plan. And so we opted for picking goals that we knew would be hard to achieve because we would never be able to say our job is done. Unless we really did do our job, in which case it'd be a rather amazing thing to say our job is done. So we picked the hard path, but we also picked the right path. There was no blueprint for this level of robust action. And as we worked with our Montgomery County resident volunteers who have a tremendous experience in climate and energy, we worked with them to help draft this plan. And it was really neat to see people from the EPA, because back in the Trump administration, they had nothing to do. So we were able to tap into people who actually had expertise in this, who knew something about the work we needed to, who are committed to fighting climate change. And they provided the backbone of the research for the work we did. We generated hundreds of ideas, and I'm really grateful to all of you. I don't know how many of you are here today, but I'm grateful to everything you did because you set us in motion. This then went over to the consulting group we hired to take your recommendations and analyze them for what are the most cost-effective things to do, what's the right order to do them in, how do we move a path forward. And all of that work kind of brings us to today. It's important to start by saying that this is an evolving document that'll be updated every year. So not every question is answered here. There are some things at the end of the document that we will point out that will continue to contribute to greenhouse gases unless either the federal or the state government acts. We can't fix everything. We are committed to greening the grid as much as we can green the grid. And we're really thankful for the community choice energy but we're hampered by state goals that are 10 years behind our goals. We're trying to get to a clean grid by 2035. The state's goal is 2045. It would be nice if the state aligned with us. It would make our work a lot easier. The path that we lay out is bound by current technology and current boundaries that are set by both federal and state laws and regulations. And, when we started the process, we didn't have the option of community choice. So if we had put together a plan 2 years ago, we wouldn't have had community choice in there because we wouldn't have had the option of community choice. We could do like one of the other jurisdictions, as a very popular climate plan did, and say they're going to do community choice, but when you read their plan, it says waiting for legislation. Well, we got the legislation, so we know what we're going to be able to do, and we're looking forward to doing that. We're going to engage with the state. We're going to be part of the process at the Public Service Commission to get the regulations written and to come up with our own implementation plan. I want to thank Lord Brian Feldman, all the folks in the state legislature who made this possible and led on this, because community choice is going to be a big deal for us. When we started on this, when we started down this road, some of us had seen drawings of hydrogen buses. Hydrogen buses were a possibility at date uncertain and cost uncertain. When we wrote the plan, we didn't know as much about hydrogen buses as we know today. We know enough about hydrogen buses that we've actually ordered them. And we're working on moving forward with the combination of hydrogen and electric buses. Hydrogen for the longer routes, where we don't want to have to buy 2 buses to be able to create a day's circulation, and electric for the shorter routes. So we're looking at a comprehensive plan, and to do this in ways we couldn't have done it before. And we're looking at ways, for example, of turning our food waste into hydrogen that can then be turned back to fuel our buses. So we have the possibility of actually creating a complete virtuous cycle. And I got to say, a couple of years ago, hydrogen production was either incredibly expensive or awaiting some kind of magical new changes. There are now commercial hydrogen companies that are beginning the conversion of hydrogen. Some of the gas pipeline companies have talked about green natural gas coming out of food waste that would be going through the pipelines instead of fossil fuel natural gas. So there are changes that are occurring as we write that. And that's why this document has to be living. Every year, the county is going to review to see what has changed in the world, what can we buy, what can we implement today that we couldn't have implemented a year ago. And so this document has to be a living document. And hopefully it'll address some of the cost issues that we have to deal with. But we're seeing the ground shift underneath us, and it's shifting in the right direction. And I'm optimistic that as we move toward 2027, and move toward 2035, that we're going to have more tools than ever to do that. The cost on the tools will come down. We'll get more good ideas about, that we shared the idea with the school system on how to purchase their electric buses. We came up with a way to get a hold of the buses that took us out of the normal capital procurement process. It reduced the need for us to find capital. We're looking at implementing that with our own buses, our own cars. We're a model with Ford Motor Company. We're testing Ford's Mustang Mach-E as a police vehicle and working with them to see what it takes to equip it. And if we do that, then we will flip our 1,000-car fleet of police cars. We will turn that into an electric fleet. We're looking at electrifying the rest of the fleet we use, and we're looking at electrification of heavier vehicles. It's important to recognize this plan is going to need some help. We can't do this all. I cannot mandate everything in a plan. And so the county council is going to have to play an important role. We've sent over to the council the building energy performance standards and the updated green building code, and it's going to require council action. The building energy performance standards take existing buildings and require them to move toward current requirements. Doesn't make them do it instantly, but it moves them in the direction of reducing their energy footprints, and they're going to be mandatory. And we're also updated the International Green Building Code. I think we're using the 2018 version now, which is the latest, and the new one will be coming out in a year or something. So we're now updated the code, and I directed staff basically to adopt the code. The first version of the code we took was seriously watered down. This version of the code is not watered down, and it's important. How important are these two actions? 50% of our greenhouse emissions comes out of our built environment, a combination of new buildings and old buildings. If we cannot pass the BEPS and we do not adopt the Green Building Code, there is no climate plan. There is no achieving any goals by 2027 or 2035. So everybody who says they're an environmentalist either votes for a climate plan that gets us on that road, or they don't. But there's no in between. There's no halfway measures that are going to get us there. Even with all of this, it requires high levels of people adapting to some of the changes we're recommending. But if people don't do it, it doesn't happen. That's part of what the work we need to do with the public, the work we need to do with public officials, the work we need to do at the state level and the federal level, is everybody's got to understand this won't happen unless we take the actions that make it possible. The same thing is true with electric vehicles or hydrogen vehicles. They're a critical part of reducing emissions. It's another 30% or more of those emissions. And so if we can't change our fleets, then we don't go there. But we can take care of our fleet. I can change the government fleet. What I can't do is get homeowners to replace gas cars with electric cars. I can't get fleet buyers to replace their fleets of taxis or business vehicles with electric vehicles. Those are decisions that people are going to have to make in order to make this package possible. And so what you'll see in the package is what we can achieve if people do the things that they need to do. But a lot of this ultimately depends on people doing the right thing. Now, we saw that in COVID, that people, when they understand the importance of their actions, did the right thing. And what we're hoping happens with climate change now is that we can help build an awareness of the importance of people's individual actions so that people will do the right thing. We're looking for ways to help. We will try to facilitate this transformation. We are dearly hoping that the state and federal agencies step up and bring more dollars to this. I'm very encouraged by the signs coming out of the Biden administration that they recognize that they can't simply mandate it and say we're going to have a different climate. They're going to have to help pay for helping us get there. So that to me is just really important. Finally, the CAP identifies 86 actions that the county must address to eliminate the greenhouse gases by 2035. It includes strategies for climate adaptation and resilience, while sharply highlighting the existing inequities in our own community. We can't address climate change without recognizing the disproportionate impacts on certain segments of our population. If we're going to go to the older buildings in Wheaton and say, you have to turn off your natural gas and you have to electrify the heat, and we know that electric heat is more expensive than gas heat to start with, and the transformation of a building from a gas building to an electric building is not going to be cheap, we're going to need help, because we could win the war on the climate and we could displace the minority populations in this county. That would be a hell of a victory, not the victory I want to be part of. I want to be sure that when we defeat climate change, we don't do it at the expense of people who live here. So we've got to find ways to make that transformation feasible for people. This plan also identifies nature-based actions. Thank you. So it includes retaining and managing and expanding forests. There's a concept. It includes protecting wetlands, grasslands, and the urban canopy, such as it is. This is probably the greenest spot in Wheaton. You go through Silver Spring and parts of Bethesda, good luck finding a tree. We need to do better with our urban canopy. And we, of course, are going to consider racial justice and social justice as we do all of this. I want to be clear that implementing this plan is not going to be easy nor cheap. But the truth is, and I think we all know this, it's going to cost us more not to fix this than it's going to cost us to fix it. Already, we're looking at these flooding events, and we're getting complaints from communities that the stormwater system no longer handles the stormwater. These aren't communities that somebody built another apartment building in or somebody built another neighborhood in. These are the same communities, the same old communities with the same old infrastructure. The pipes are not big enough to handle the amount of water. Imagine what we're facing, having to modernize our stormwater infrastructure in this county in order to protect people's homes, in order to keep our roads safe during major storms. So this is not going to be an easy or cheap path, but it's going to cost us a whole lot more if we don't start doing these things. It's going to call for a commitment from both the state, public, and private resources, and it's going to be critical that we mitigate our costs. We're going to institutionalize climate change considerations within Montgomery County processes and decision-making, measuring and reporting on progress, fostering creativity, collaboration, innovation on county government to implement climate solutions. We're going to leave no stone unturned, and we're going to ask people continually to look at what we can do differently. I think, one of the things that we didn't address in the initial year of the climate plan we were talking about yesterday was government travel. Well, we're not flying. And we're hoping, frankly, that there's a whole lot more of Zoom meetings rather than people flying places around the country. We don't need to fly to some place unless it's really, really important that you be sitting there rather than sitting in an office here. So hopefully we're going to actually reduce our travel that requires us to use airplanes. We are going to engage with all of you, our county residents, businesses, and all of you who are our partners. Excuse me. We need partners, and we need everybody to partner with us. We will not get there on the basis of government action alone. So we've got a living document that's going to give us the opportunity to make adjustments. We're going to be able to, and we're going to work to addressing affordability with as many different tools as we can. And we've proven this already, so we know we can go further. We need a sense of urgency to inspire us to do this, and we need to inspire other jurisdictions. Montgomery County is not going to save the planet. We won't even save Maryland. Us in the district might make a dent in the DC region, but it takes everybody. We need everybody to look at these same goals and adopt similar programs. So it really is going to be an all hands on deck effort to tackle climate change. We have to be flexible and nimble, and we have to begin by taking important and positive steps forward. So we know we're in a different environment. We know we're going to be able to do things we weren't able to do before. We know we're asking a lot. We're asking a lot of the private sector, but frankly, we're asking a lot of individuals. All of us are going to have to be part of this. Finally, I just want to say that, we've got to treat this kind of like we treated COVID, with the same level of seriousness and the same level of urgency. I do believe that we're capable of doing this. We saw in this community what we were able to do in fighting a 15-month war to keep our community as intact as we could possibly keep it. And we did an astoundingly good job, and I'd like to take all the credit in the government, but the truth is we could have dictated anything we wanted, but if people had done it, what we did would not have worked. The same thing is true with climate change. We can lay out the plan, we can dictate everything we can dictate, but if people don't adopt it and people aren't willing to do it, we don't get there. So this has to be something that we're all in together. Environmentalist Paul Hawken literally wrote about the book about reversing global warming. He said, if you look at the science about what is happening on Earth and aren't pessimistic, you don't understand the data. If you meet the people who are working to restore this Earth and the lives of the poor, and you aren't optimistic, you haven't got a pulse. And that's the way I feel. I grew up in the 60s. I think there were probably a few of you who may vaguely remember the 60s. The number of student groups and activist groups on campus, you can pretty much count on one hand. There's maybe one of, I think, the PERG was one of the first organizations on campus. There were, some political groups on campus, one of which I belonged to, a couple of which I belonged to. But there were really few of us. And if you look around now, what encourages me on the campuses and in communities is the growth in environmental groups and the growth in social justice groups. This is no longer a few people swimming up water against the tide. This is a lot of people recognizing the need to change. So I am optimistic. I want to thank, in my own staff, Adriana and Adam and Chris Conklin at DOT and David Dice in our government services and Earl Stoddard from emergency management for all of their work on this and for your engagement on this and for recognizing the importance of this. Together, we are going to make a difference. And what we are hoping to do is from this moment to ignite a campaign in our community. One of the resources we put in the budget was for community work. This is going to change when neighbor goes to neighbor and says, it's time for us to change the way we do things. I see this in neighborhoods with solar panels. You see one solar panel on the roof, and maybe in a few months, you start looking at other solar panels on other people's roofs. When they talk to the owner and they say, did that really work for you? And I've talked to owners and they say, yeah, it really works for them. And I'm about to get solar panels on my roof. So I'm going to be able to tell you a personal story about that. But in the meantime, we have our work cut out for us. I think we've got the bodies, we've got the plan, and we've got the brain power in this county. We will work to get the money power because that's ultimately what everything hangs on. But we're going to get this done. And I'm just so thankful for all the work that you all did to get us to this moment. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Our next speaker is County Council President and Transportation and Environment Committee Chair, Tom Hucker. Mr. Hucker has a long career as an environmental advocate and policymaker at the county and state level. While serving as a delegate in the Maryland General Assembly, Mr. Hucker was the original sponsor of the Offshore Wind Act. Welcome, Mr. Council President.
Thank you so much, Adriana. I'm going to break this before I'm done. All right, not my fault in advance. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Okay. My name is Tom Hucker, as Adriana said. I'm the council president currently, and I chair the Transportation and Environment Committee. I'm very excited to be here to join you to announce the launch and share the final draft of the Climate Action Plan. This year, as Mark mentioned, we've been all very focused on COVID, on something else. But we can't lose sight of the existential climate crisis that is an existential threat to our future. As a county, we recognized the need to take bold actions quite a while ago, and that's why we have the ambitious goal of reducing our carbon by 100% by 2035. Yes, that's still worth applauding. Thank you. Before I move forward, though, I want to thank the county executive. I want to thank ACAO Hochberg, the climate czarina. You should follow her Twitter. I want to thank Patty Bubar and Stan Edwards and Doug Weisberger and everybody on your fabulous team for moving this ahead. I know it's a huge amount of work, and it's particularly a huge amount of work under the very difficult circumstances of the past year. And I really want to thank all the work groups and the community partners and the residents who weighed in on all these recommendations. We started with 850 recommendations, 850. And part of the reason is because we have so many talented volunteer experts in Montgomery County. There's something like 3,000 counties in the United States, right? No county has the volunteer bench of talent, of experts that we have in Montgomery County. I know Mark and I both agreed we are crazy if we don't tap into them and give all those folks a role to play in creating this plan. And believe me, if we went a different direction, we would continue to hear from everybody in the future. So it's great that we have collective buy-in from so many experts in Montgomery County that have made this a far better plan than we would have made on our own. And for that reason, the Climate Action Plan is bold, it's specific, and it gives us a very strong roadmap to respond to the climate crisis. As Mark said, it mentions 86 specific policy recommendations. I'm happy that the council now, with the FY22 budget that we recently passed, has now taken action and funded the vast majority of those recommendations. Many of those policy steps are already underway, such as transitioning our ride-on and our MCPS buses to be fully electric. And it's great that each recommendation accounts for the effects, not just on climate, but on public health and on equity and racial equity as well, because we know now what we didn't know several years ago, decades ago, that the communities that are the hardest hit, just like certain communities were much harder hit by COVID than other communities, the communities that are going to be hardest hit and are already being hardest hit by the climate crisis are so many communities that have borne the brunt of the legacy of environmental racism and redlining for many, many years. And they have to be consciously and intentionally part of the solution moving forward. The recommendations cover many areas of life that affect county residents every day, including updating our building codes, expanding our public transit options, our bike lanes and electric vehicle charging stations, and they address all those changes in an equitable and sustainable manner. Mark mentioned the use of renewable energy in the CCE bill. That's terrific. They also focus on updating our building codes and incentivizing building retrofits to change our older buildings to be far more efficient, so that we're both, those owners are saving money and we're protecting the climate as well. They also focus on things like retaining our forest and increasing our tree canopy. And Adam, they focus a lot, thank you, on updating our stormwater resources, because we're going to see more intense floods, as Mark mentioned, and we have to have a plan to deal with that, or we're going to be paying a lot more in the back end. And one thing I really love that wasn't mentioned is that they develop climate community ambassadors who are going to do sustained and cross-cultural and multimodal and multi-generational and multilingual outreach to the community to make sure everybody is playing a part of the solution, because we're all affected by climate change no matter who you are. We'll have materials available now in Amharic, Chinese, French, Korean, Spanish, and Vietnamese, as well as English, because we really want everybody to know about the Climate Action Plan, to accept it, adopt it, and be part of the solution. All of us have been producing carbon all our lives, and we have not always had the choices that we have today to build a more sustainable and a climate-friendly county. So now all of us have to do our part to change our county so it's more efficient, it's better adapted, and it's more resilient in the face of the climate crisis. The county government can't do it by ourselves. We each have a role to play. And I can tell you, my colleagues on the Transportation and Environment Committee, as well as the entire County Council, are down for this challenge, and we're going to move forward to adopt all the recommendations we possibly can in this plan. We'll be taking up the building energy performance standards very soon, and the green building code, and we'll have vigorous debate about that, and we'll engage all of our community partners and our residents in building that solution. But we need everybody's continued collaboration and feedback and support to get there. I'm eager to make Montgomery County the clean energy leader that we all want it to be. We also know so much of our climate future, we don't even have the authority to address, because many of the policy changes are made at the state level or the federal level. But I can tell you from 8 years of serving in Annapolis, the state government rarely does the right thing until Montgomery County does the right thing. So we all need to step up and stay involved to get Montgomery County laws on the books to help the state take action as well. Bill McKibben said, very few people on earth ever get to say, I'm doing right now the most important thing I could possibly be doing. So make no mistake, by being here today and working to address our climate crisis, you are all doing exactly the most important thing you could possibly be doing right now. So thank you all for being part of this event and part of driving our climate action plan forward. We need all your help to get it passed. Thank you so much.
Before I introduce our next speaker, I have a special message to share from U.S. Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland, who could not be with us today. And here's his message. Greetings to everyone gathered today in Montgomery County. Although the Senate schedule has kept me from being here in person, I offer my hearty congratulations on this bold climate action unveiled today. This year, 2021, is for climate ambition and action globally and in the United States. After 4 years without federal engagement, the Biden-Harris administration has made climate a centerpiece of its policy agenda. Having recently formally rejoined the Paris Agreement, the Biden-Harris administration delivered on its commitment to a new national climate target to the international community. This new national target to achieve a 50 to 52% reduction from 2005 levels in economy-wide net greenhouse gas pollution in 2030 is critically important. It is aligned with what we know improves Marylanders' lives and is complementary with the Biden administration's Build Back Better priorities. Increasing climate ambition will significantly improve public health, avoiding tens of thousands of premature deaths from the health-damaging pollution that characterizes our current fossil fuel-reliant economy. It will also drive a much-needed economic boon in the pandemic-induced recession by putting millions to work every year. Montgomery County's Climate Action Plan is a perfect example of how actions can accelerate emissions reductions. As your senator, it's my responsibility to support the plan at the federal level. I am particularly energized that the path to meet Montgomery County's zero greenhouse gas emissions goal by 2035 involves reducing emissions in the energy, buildings, and transportation sectors by increasing affordable clean energy, implementing code requirements related to energy efficiency, solar installations, and building energy performance standards, expanding public transit service, pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, and electric vehicles. I'd like to commend County Executive Elridge, the County Council under the leadership of County President Tom Hucker, and the community members who contributed to the development of the Climate Action Plan. Montgomery County's plan leverages the opportunity to not only build back better, but it also embodies the structural change that we need to meet our ambitious clean targets for 2035. And it puts us on the path to meet our climate challenges for generations to come. Thank you for all you're doing, and stay well. As has been mentioned this afternoon, the Climate Action Plan reflects the work of many county residents who served in a volunteer capacity on technical work groups. One of these work group members is Denise Guitarra. Denise is a climate equity and conservation champion who works at the Audubon Naturalist Society by day and volunteered to serve on the transportation work group by night. Welcome, Denise.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Adriana, for inviting me for today's event. My name is Denise Guitarra. I am the Maryland Conservation Advocate for Audubon Naturalist Society. For 124 years, Audubon Naturalist Society, also known as ANS, has inspired residents of the greater Washington, D.C. region to appreciate, understand, and protect their natural environment through outdoor experiences, education, and advocacy. As part of our long legacy of civic action, we participated in the development of the Climate Action Plan, also known as CAP. We participated in more than a dozen meetings since 2019 with county staff and various coalitions, provided written testimonies, and hosted online webinars that were open to the public. We have taken a look and are still analyzing the final draft plan. And while the plan is not perfect, we are excited to see that it includes some of the recommendations, such as increasing tree and forest protections, working more closely with communities, specifically BIPOC communities, to co-create policies. What we appreciated the most during this process was the flexibility and openness to change. Continuing in that spirit will be essential to helping us reach a more perfect plan and our goals to help bring Montgomery County's rich traditions of social justice and environmental protection to better serve every community. Climate justice is human justice, and therefore fighting for climate change is about valuing life itself. It's about valuing plants, animals, people, and how each one of us is connected to our habitats. We are in a climate emergency, and that means that we must ensure that environmental justice is at the forefront of climate change movement, because communities of color experience disproportionate harms from damage caused by climate change. The CAP lays out an ambitious blueprint for the future. However, we're here to emphasize that the CAP still needs to be strengthened and include specific environmental policies, especially those regarding more trees and better stormwater management, and community inclusion and engagement. We need the council to enact policies that will help us achieve these climate change goals, such as passing a no net loss of forest policy. We'd like to thank the Montgomery County Executive Mark Elridge, Climate Change Coordinator Adriana Hodgeberg, and Council President Hucker for inviting us to be part of this process. We look forward to continuing to work with the county, the government agencies, the environmental organizations, and most importantly, the BIPOC communities and individuals to help us deliver to the Montgomery County residents an even stronger and more effective plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise, for highlighting the need to center racial equity and social justice in climate action. Climate work must be done in alignment with and in support of racial equity and social justice. We need to hear from those members of the community who are most impacted by climate change, and we must collaborate in co-creating solutions. Last summer, in the midst of the pandemic and in partnership with COVID Corps, we launched the Resilience Ambassadors program with 5 young people in the community. The Resilience Ambassadors expanded and deepened our engagement efforts by connecting with their neighbors and their networks and brought additional perspectives to help shape the climate action plan. Our next speaker is Omotola Fadei, who served as a Resilience Ambassador. Omotola is an incoming senior at Paint Branch High School who loves STEM and is planning a career as a medical doctor. She's an extraordinary member of our community who engages with empathy. Welcome, Omotola.
Hello, everyone. I'm sure everyone here has quite the unique story to tell about the last 2 years due to an uninvited virus, bringing on quite just the ride. My life was touched by the pandemic mid-March last year and I've gone through quite the indoor ride inside. Sorry, this is it. With all the worries you would expect the high school sophomore to face during the time, homework, exams, etc., one concern was definitely the question mark that was now surrounding the future of my summer. But thankfully, Montgomery County had thrown me quite the gem with the role as a Resilience Ambassador, an experience that I will hold near and dear to my heart. Even with rising talks of climate change and inequity, the difference between being aware and being educated was more than evident when joining this duty. I knew very little about the ramifications of climate change, the vulnerabilities that really exist in my community regarding transportation and infrastructure, and how racial equity tied into the fight to go green. But thanks to the help of amazing supervisors, I was able to develop an understanding of the issues existing in my community due to my location and demographic, as well as help craft solutions with the help of other community members. Reaching out to residents of varying ages was not the easiest thing to do, social skills understandably dwindling with COVID. But with the stories, experiences, and point of views received via outreach was vital for Montgomery County to reach and incorporate the voices of some of its most marginalized people. So let it be known that struggles vary and may even be intensified outside of richer and wider communities, and that combating climate change was a collective effort that needed to address all in the county. Every single time I asked a resident about the Montgomery County they wanted to see, I peered into a new perspective that emphasized the changes and resources that needed to be felt all through our county. It was a pleasure to be part of a project that was able to put the voices of the previously voiceless on the desk of the heads of Montgomery County. And I hope with time, more outreach and communication, climate change, transportation, social justice, and more can be worked on to the benefit of not only the world, but for all that call this county their home. Thank you.
Thank you, Omotola, for your inspiring words and for inspiring action in each of us. Our next speaker is Karen Matches. Karen is a retired climate change expert at the US EPA and a longtime Montgomery County resident. She served as a community facilitator for the climate adaptation work group and has also helped to train county staff on climate adaptation and resilience. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Adriana. Thank you, Mark, Tom, Adam, Earl, Mara, all the folks that we worked with. I'm here to represent the work of the 40-member Adaptation and Sequestration Work Group. Prevention is the best medicine, and we're really happy to see all the actions to reduce greenhouse gases. But we're also especially pleased that this plan includes a robust set of actions that are within the county's control to prepare our community for the effects of climate change. We're already experiencing hotter summers, warmer winters, greater variability in precipitation, including more intense rainstorms, threats of drought, and more. These changes pose risks to our public health, to our public safety, as well as to our natural environment. To build our resilience, the plan includes actions to adapt our built environment, including our stormwater and drainage infrastructure, our building standards, and so on, as well as ways to leverage the power of our critical natural resources to protect and improve our communities. I strongly endorse the intentions of the county to work with the Planning Commission on ensuring that the Thrive 250 development plans are in line with the goals of this CAP, including the adaptation goals. We're especially glad to see that the plan recognizes the dual role of nature-based solutions for sequestering carbon and for adaptation. By expanding our tree canopy, for example, including both forest and urban trees, we not only sequester carbon, but we cool our communities. Composting of food waste, etc., sequesters carbon and builds up our soils for improved productivity. And similarly, rain gardens help control local flooding while also retaining carbon and so many other benefits of natural resources. It's critical that we prioritize the most vulnerable, target actions to the people and places that are greatest at risk, and I believe this plan intends to do that. And it's also important for each of us, as Mark said, to take responsibility to protect our own homes and families. That includes both in the private sector and us in our personal lives. And the public outreach actions embedded here hopefully will get that message across. And I know that the very enthusiastic members of our work group will want to stay involved to help implement this plan, as I will, and I hope that everyone in the community will do so as well. Thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. In conjunction with the Climate Action Plan, today we are also releasing the fiscal year 2022 Climate Work Plan. The work plan describes the 75 climate actions the county plans to make progress on during the upcoming year. Our near-term activities cover all sectors of the Climate Action Plan, from clean energy to public engagement. I invite you to review the work plan and the Climate Action Plan on the county's climate website, montgomerycountymd.gov/climate. Our final speaker this afternoon is Samuel Surafell. Samuel is an entrepreneur, global program manager, technology specialist, and founder of Silver Spring-based Mensa Collabs. As a co-chair of the African Affairs Advisory Group, Samuel is partnering with the county to launch the Climate Stories Ambassadors Project, one of our fiscal year 22 public engagement efforts. Welcome, Samuel.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm the last thing between you and lunch or your afternoon snack, so I'll make this quick. First, I want to say congratulations and thank you to the county executive, county council, Adriana, Doug, who I interacted with most closely, and the rest of county leadership that put this together. This is a Herculean task, and the county executive mission is sort of looks like and represents similar to what happened with COVID. But in my eyes, I see it as somewhat of a, what happened when we were trying to get to the moon. And so I hope that sort of in future, the resources and needed to sort of pursue this endeavor are provided to you all to scale and do your work intensely. So that's the first thing I'd like to say. And then the second thing is, being the co-chair of the African Affairs Advisory Group, I'm really concerned about the people in the community. And Montgomery County is blessed to have above 50% representation of people of color, our residents here. And we know that by 2045, it'll be 73% of this county be of people of color. That's almost 3/4. So, in my eyes, I think anything that moves forward with climate has to reflect what the community looks like and is at all levels. In that, I want to just sort of bring it down to a very micro level example among the community, especially within the African immigrant community. There are many of the people who are already working in this field, who are providing services. One in particular, which I think really illustrates the CAP in its totality, is a gentleman by the name of Jean-Vive Daye of Sunlight to the Rescue. He's done some work before in the county. And he's been around since 2009, trying to really push forward this issue of solar design, solar installation with his firm. But he's not only an entrepreneur, someone who's working in this field, He's also a part of the Panifest Committee. The Panifest Committee creates one of the biggest cultural endeavors in the county every year. That event brings tourism to the county. So if a firm like his, and there are many of his like that in the county, owned by folks of color, grows, they employ more, they train more, they bring more awareness to the county, and that awareness will help also in the outreach initiatives that help people adopt climate friendly practices amongst the community, because he's from the community. So, from our perspective, I think this is a fantastic start. And again, it's a one of a kind, once in a lifetime opportunity. And so you guys are the perfect people to be leading it. We hope that it increasingly looks at the eyes of green jobs and inclusiveness, not only in engagement, but in terms of ownership and participation at the highest levels. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. Now that the Climate Action Plan has been unveiled, let's celebrate and enjoy this beautiful day. And tomorrow, let's get back to work on climate action, because there is so much work for all of us to do and no time to waste. The path ahead is not easy, but now we have a blueprint to guide us along the way to zero greenhouse gas emissions and a healthy, equitable, and resilient Montgomery County. Thank you.
Every day and spend time with them. They make me look good, and I'm so incredibly proud to be part of this team. I particularly want to acknowledge Emmanuel Nusta. He's filming at the same time. Emmanuel is the heart of this operation. He truly is. He's spent about 17, 18 years as the director of nursing